today's topic is really, I think, a hot topic out there. The Scrum Guide, changing the Scrum Guide. What does this new Scrum Guide look like? So we've got two of our senior coaches here that are going to help us through this. So we've got Marcelo and Leon that's going to help us lead us through this. I know most of you already know Marcelo and Leon. I mean, these are coaches that are pretty well known out in the industry. But again, to me, very fortunate to have them participate, not just on Wednesday. These are the coaches that make things happen on Saturday. And they've been with us for over 8 months through this journey of helping the community out. So these are the master coaches out there giving back. So very proud to have them. So I'm going to pass the baton on to who? Marcelo and Leon, it's your show. Go for it, sir.
Actually, you know, the last thing that we did not do this morning, Leon, now that I think about it, in our backlog refinement was to come up with who is going to present.
We'll let you present. That's easy. But so I have a this is going to be fun because Marcelo and I are gonna spar back and forth on because we're I don't have his beard, but I have other qualities. I have a particular set of skills. I want to open it up with a question because I want to get some folks typing in the chat and get folks engaged early. So I asked a question before, but I want folks to contribute to the chat. I'd like folks to tell me the year and the place in which Scrum was introduced publicly. Type that in the chat.
I think if you get it incorrect, you take out their CSM, right? So if they're certified, we actually remove the certification
we can do that. Oh, wait a minute. We got somebody.
Joke, guys, that's a joke.
The year. The question was, though, the year and the place. We do not give partial credit here. We'll give you a smile, but we don't give partial credit. Okay. Utah, Texas, Utah. Ooh, okay.
This was at a specific conference, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
It's still going on.
Wait a minute. 19. Okay. Well, we were getting really hot, and then we got suddenly completely frigid.
It's okay.
So somebody thaw us out here.
So this will be the person that can Google the fastest?
Yes, apparently. Okay. And
so are you, there are two stuff to this. Are you asking when it was introduced formally or when it was thought about? 93
No.
was thought about.
Introduced formally, publicly.
Formally. Okay. All right.
Yeah, what year it was formally introduced and where it was formally introduced.
This is a conference.
It's a match set.
Yeah, what's interesting about this is that Scrum was introduced publicly before the Agile was introduced more formally. Mm-hmm. So there were many folks that came for the initial Agile meetup. They didn't even call it Agile at the time because they hadn't named it. Extra credit. What was the conference in Utah in 2001 called?
Victoria had already said it there.
So Victoria's right. It was the UPSLA conference.
So it's the object-oriented programming.
Yep. It was the UPSLA conference in 1995. Extra credit. What was that? A lot of people said 2001. What was that conference called? What was that conference called? Because like if you were to go in these conference rooms back in the early 2000s, you'd see the TVs and the little scrolling thing. So what was that conference called?
You want the whole name? It's pretty long.
Yeah, it had
no.
Oh, you mean like a nickname or whatever?
No, it was the name.
The object-oriented programming.
No, not that. Not that. That was Scrum.
Okay.
I'm talking about when the first Agile gathering in 2001.
Oh, where they met in
yes. Who knows?
Oh gosh.
I forgot that.
Oh gosh. I know there were 17 of them total. Oh jeez.
Yep. All right. So who can tell us? Marcelo.
Yep.
You want me to tell you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Tell you, or you want me to show you?
No, you can show me.
Show me. Show and tell.
I will show you now.
Show and tell. Lightweight.
Yep. I might even have a picture of the TV somewhere, Marcelo.
Oh, you're right. Snowbird, Utah.
Yeah.
I should have remembered Snowbird. Yes.
Yep. So they hadn't branded it Agile yet, and they didn't know what to call it. So, but they basically called it the Lightweight Frameworks Conference.
I didn't remember that.
Name, right?
The Snowbird, definitely.
Here's an even more obscure. Here's an even more obscure piece of trivia. Who gave it the name Agile? Who gave it the name Agile there at this conference? Who gave it the name? It's obviously one of the 17 people.
Was it?
Okay.
Well, I'm guessing Jeff.
Was
Sutherland?
it Ken?
It wasn't even one of the creators of Scrum who gave it.
Come on, you know those are the only names we know.
you should know this name because he collaborated with Ken. So a Scrum person, a
real
gave it this name.
Wow.
Although it was a close, what was the second brand name that they were considering that almost made it? Anybody know that?
Gosh, you're making us have to go do some homework for history.
That's not nice.
I know, right? He's making that. We didn't know there was going to be a quiz.
Wait, I'm sorry. It's me and Marcelo. Okay, so I think Marcelo.
We didn't know there was going to be a quiz. I would have studied.
A quiz.
I think we've gone overboard.
I don't remember that.
I think I do.
I've heard it long ago, but I don't remember it now.
I think, yeah. So they were going to go with adaptive. They were basically going to go with adaptive, and it was a tie, almost like a tie between Agile and adaptive in terms of branding what they wanted to do for lightweight frameworks.
Okay.
This was yeah, right. But this was the one that shoot.
Yeah,
he recommended this one.
Yeah. So, sorry, we got a little bit too in the weeds in here with some of this, but there's a lot there, and it provides you a good background for a lot of people to know, like what how did this come about, why did this happen, who was involved. A lot of this stuff is just it clicks, right? A lot of stuff clicks when you know some of this information. So there's a lot behind it that people don't know about that sometimes can be very revealing. But I think we have engagement and I think we have befuddlement at the same time, Marcelo.
Yeah.
So we will don't worry. We wanted to sort of get engagement and share some very deep trivia on this. But we want to talk about the Scrum Guides.
Yeah.
That was very deep.
Yeah, well, and recognize that this is pretty fresh. It's actually less than a month old when it came out. Although I confess, I've been struggling with this for almost a year because back in April, Jeff sent out to some of the trainers a version of the Scrum Guide, or rather a revision of the Scrum Guide, which is the complete polar opposite of this, whereby the new guide is 13 pages. The one that he sent us in April, in the middle of COVID, was 24 pages. It immediately caused an uproar, and we're like, no, you're not doing this. Go back. Back and do it. And so some cooler heads prevailed. And so as the quote there says from Ken, it brings Scrum back to being minimally sufficient framework and removing or softening prescriptive language. So it's with that in mind that I want you guys to think about what you're going to see. In other words, a lot has been not just necessarily removed, but simplified, which means that now we're going to have to think a little bit harder, a little bit deeper about what these folks were talking about. Okay. Now, mind you, if you haven't taken a Scrum Master class or something like that, and you want to, until January 9th, 2021, the Scrum.org classes are still going to use the old test, okay? The Scrum Alliance is going to go a little bit further, probably until April. So if you haven't been certified, you still have time, so to speak, okay? So if you need some help with that, obviously hit us up at Transformation Experts. But as always, here's kind of the walkthrough: changes, additions, removals. So without further ado, hey, Leon,
Yeah.
you brought this in. You want to give us a little walkthrough?
Yeah, I like pictures because I need glasses and I can't read anything anymore.
Here, take mine.
Yeah. So I like pictures, but I wanted one, this is not my picture per se, but I wanted one artwork in one place about what the revisions were total. So changes and additions, deletions. Number one, less prescriptive. So they're trying to bring Scrum back to basics. Thinking about the minimal sufficient framework. And I brought up here that it also aligns with an agile principle, simplicity. There's more to simplicity, but thinking about lightweight, again, thinking about lightweight frameworks, thinking about how can we make this more minimal? How can we remove waste? All these things are very, very lean thinking principles. So less prescriptive. One team focused on one product. And I really think that this, so many organizations I work with don't have this. They do not have, and I might even say dedicated, where we have one dedicated team focusing on one product. I just really see that. So thinking about one team focused on one product. There was often confusion about, are you on the Scrum team? Are you on the development team? What team are you on? And so there was a lot of confusion around that with organizations I worked with. Introduction of the product goal. So this idea that we're not just sprinting, that we have this goal in mind and it's related to a product. And if you even go more extension, it's related to value, customer value, or improving customers' lives. So even behind that, right, that there's a valuable product that people are consuming and seeing value from. So it's thinking that there's a whole point to this scrumming and sprinting, and it's about it's all about the product. Sprint goal. So it's one of the things that I see teams ditch immediately, or even don't even introduce, is having a sprint goal. The so what of it all. Oftentimes, I think with Scrum, it's okay. Let's assign every individual person work, and then we're done. So it's not thinking about what are we accomplishing as a team. And I think the sprint goal is really important. And also thinking about the definition of done and product goal, thinking about that maybe a little differently. And this idea about commitments. So what's interesting is there's been a back and forth about commitments. Are they good? Are they bad? Who knows? But they're, I think, really going all in with commitments. And then self-management over self-organizing. And that's a kind of there are a lot of nuances here, and I want to talk about later on when we talk about this. What do you think self-management is versus self-organizing? I want to talk, and I want that to be an interactive part of our talk today. Simplification, sprint planning topics. So a lot about the why we do things, which is really good. And then simplification of the language. Again, simplification is a theme here. Less prescriptive, simplify.
So you want to jump in?
Yeah. So less prescriptive. I like how they do potentially shippable, minimally sufficient. So removing or softening prescriptive language, make it more open. And I think that's something that, that they have thought about, right? So Ken and Jeff have thought about how can we make this more broad and more adaptable for folks, less prescriptive. So there are a couple examples here. Removing the daily Scrum questions. A lot of people were freaked out by that, but it opens up a lot of possibilities. The product backlog attributes, languages about retro items in the sprint backlog. So when do you cancel a sprint? There was a big debate about that. So I think I like this section personally, where they've thought about how can we make this less prescriptive and actually implemented some things. And you can debate whether you like them or not, but I think that is a good thing. Less prescriptive is a good thing. Having Scrum more broadly used is a good thing. Next. Removal of IT terminology. And I think that's a big key that's been going on lately. So people have been talking about business agility and Scrum outside of IT. And so very much Scrum and Agile were IT focused, software development focused. Now, why can't we make a sandwich using Scrum? Why can't we cook using Scrum? We should be able to do all of this. And to me, this also ties into this rise of business agility, that it doesn't have to be IT specific. And we can use Scrum in any context, doing anything, any work. So in my mind, anything you do you can use Scrum for. Isn't that amazing? So we don't have to have this whole list of things, including autonomous vehicles. But I like that they completely omitted it. It's awesome. Let's go.
Yeah, basically they open the door to pretty much, well, whatever you could conceive of, even sales and marketing, and even HR, for that matter.
Yes. And Terry has a good question, but do you want to? That should always be a question. Mm-hmm. Do you want to do this? Is this the right thing to do? And is this valuable? Should always be questions you're asking in anything you do, including family gatherings.
Yes.
Next slide. Definition of a Scrum team. No, business agility in my mind, Brandon, is anything. It could be also, let me ask this question. Is IT part of the business?
Yes.
Yes.
Who says no? If you're in IT, have you ever said the business before?
You would be wrong. Because there is no other, there is no
we
part
say
of
it.
That is not the business.
Right.
Yes. So
we say it as a phrase referring to the stakeholders, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to me, business agility is a focus on the business, and it could be anywhere. But in my mind, what it doesn't do, it's not exclusive to software. Mm-hmm. That's what when I think about business agility, I want to say we are now looking at a bigger umbrella than software.
Yeah. And since they removed the references to software or hardware or things like that, the idea there is, what skills do you need to be able to perform the functions that you want that team to perform?
Yes.
Once you understand what that is you're trying to accomplish, there you go. You have a very simple, lightweight framework to help these folks come together and try to address the complexities of the work environment, especially, COVID. So, so this is one of the things I really love about that. The fact that they, quote unquote, ditched the team within the team, because that was really shocking to a lot of people's heads, Leon.
Yep. And I think Kushal brought up something, Agile's a philosophy. You can use it in anything you do. As you're living and breathing, you can use it in anything you do. At least I think. So the definition of a Scrum team. So there were a lot of, for many years now, people have been telling me, well, you can't invite the PO to the retro. They're not on the team. Well, it's the dev team. No, it's the dev team, not the Scrum team. No, you're not. You're on the Scrum team and not on the dev team, or you're on the dev team, not on the Scrum team. There's all this confusion and people struggle with. And yay, they made it simple. There's now just one Scrum team, which is awesome. Yay. So there's one team. So I love one team. And now we're introducing accountabilities. So there's accountabilities if you're a product owner. There's accountabilities if you're a Scrum Master, and accountabilities if you're a developer. Okay, if you're a developer, and again, that you could, there's beyond that, right? I also like the idea that, so I love the idea of the one team and thinking about this, and thinking about the Scrum team. So this makes it much simpler. Next, self-managing over self-organizing. So I want you to put in the chat, what's the difference between self-managing and self-organizing?
I think everybody's in a quandary over that. Okay. I'm gonna throw you guys a hint. Self-determination. Now what do you think?
I still think
Give me an example of self-management and give me an example of self-organizing.
Self-managing, a group of people who organize themselves to complete a product goal.
To complete a goal. Self-organizing is just literally putting us together and making sure you do this, you do that.
It's the first step in managing. You see, I started the sentence by saying self-organizing is the act of, and then I said of managing oneself to achieve a product goal. So basically what I said was a subtle but really unimportant difference.
Is commitment part of the difference?
No, you're organizing for what reason? Why are you organizing yourself? Because I want to achieve a sprint goal. Because I want to achieve a product goal. Otherwise, why the hell are you organizing?
Well, I'm just thinking like accountability. Like, I mean, you can self-organize, but if you don't hold each other accountable, then.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you are, so
that's the managing part.
So I'm a manager, okay? I'm a manager at your organization. And good news, I have a Scrum team. So it's awesome. I'm very excited. I'm, rubbing my hands. I have a Scrum team. So now what I want to do is I care about the company and I want the Scrum team to do some things that I think are important for the company. And I want to make some decisions on who's doing what and what's happening.
Yeah, but that's not self-organizing because you're making decisions for the team.
Is the team being self-managed?
No.
What if I give the team a goal and say, okay, I want to try to achieve this goal. Team, you figure out how we can achieve it.
There you go.
So my own personal opinion here is that this is something that I would bring to people leaders or managers of people, where, before they said self-organizing teams, which is, you might decide once you've been directed to do something and maybe given some dates and some marching orders, I'll call it, then you organize a little bit around it and you move people around within your team. Here they're saying that this idea about decide, and I think the key word that I see here is decide. Mm-hmm. They decide. Mm-hmm. So you're bringing information to where decisions should be made, which is at the team level versus a management level of some sort. So I think this is a sort of a hint for managers to think about, are you managing the team or is the team truly self-managed?
And there, Leon, is the distinction that I agree with. Because when managers saw the word self-organizing, they thought they still had a management responsibility.
Yes.
Though that wasn't true. Just like it wasn't true that the PO and the Scrum Master was not part of the team. That was also not true. But here they said, okay, since that word didn't help management, we're going to use a different word. We're going to use self-managing. So managers now know you don't need to manage them.
Yes. Managers, you don't have a role in this now. And what I see constantly with organizations embarking on an agile transformation is managers still want to internally assign work to teams, to their people. I don't want to stop that.
They also do one more thing that I think hurts even more. They want to judge them on how well they're managing and doing the work when the team should decide, hey, we did a real lousy job. Or, hey, we did a nice job, which managers think is part of managing a team.
Yes. So Bob asked, can a self-management team ask, no, we're not going to work on that, the what? is it okay for a developer on a team to ask, is this valuable?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you should.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would have a problem if a developer did something that they didn't believe was valuable.
Yeah. Now, Bob, what I would
my question is, can the team say, no, we are not going to work on that. We want to work on this. So what? Okay.
Yes.
So they can say that.
They have to quantify it.
What do they owe? What do they owe the organization?
Value.
I hope deliver the most valuable product at that
So
time.
you can't just say no, just for whatever. You have to you are accountable for bringing back an argument. Either it's not valuable, or because of the competitive landscape, or there has to be some reasoning behind the no. You need to be able to internally justify it.
Is this like, this is the reverse of the why? You give the why to the team, and then the team has to give you the why they want to change direction or do the value. They have to reconnect back to the vision or the direction for the product.
I think that's one example, but I think that's a responsible thing to do. So if you are, think about yourself as, if you were the CEO of the organization and you had a board to answer to, and you'd say, I want to do this, or maybe I don't want to do this, there needs to be some rationale that connects back to the company's values or objectives or principles that aligns with it. It shouldn't be just no for no's sake. I think everything that you do or don't do needs to connect back to the organization's mission, vision, values, objectives, etc. And if you're not doing that, then you're missing out a little bit. You're missing some connections, I think.
I think it's more than that. Think about, you got a team and the team has a backlog, and a key item to the team is clearing up some technical debt, even under the old Scrum Guide, right?
Yep.
Product owner goes to the business, they go to the product owner and convince the product owner there's value in clearing up technical debt down the road for the business.
Sure.
So you got to convince them. You have to have arguments and convince them like you're a lawyer. Now the product owners, right? And then product owners go back to the business.
So, and I would always say you have to always do some education of the business and product owner on things like technical debt. There's no question what's in their best interest. And if you think about it, aren't we selling all the time? Aren't we selling all the time? Right. You have to be selling all the time. You should be selling yourself. You should be selling the team. You should be talking about value. You should be talking about why we're doing stuff all the time. To me, if you're not, you should be doing that. Right. You should be doing that. I think that's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
It's always a good thing. I don't think it's a bad thing, because you never know when you're going to be in an elevator with the CEO and could talk about tech debt. Yes. All right, let's move on. Next slide. Use of accountabilities overalls. Now, this is going to be very controversial. Very controversial.
Yeah. Do you mind if I show a slide here for a second, Leon?
Sure. Go ahead.
Give it. Because you
Yes.
And this is
when
how
he finishes.
This is how I described it to some students today. Okay. Because instead of the roles, like you see the names inside of the red circle. Okay. Outside of that circle, what's binding them together are their accountabilities. The product owner accountable for the work results and the value resulting from them. The developers accountable for delivering the done increment, okay, and not compromising product quality along the way, all right? And then the Scrum Master accountable for the team using Scrum to improve itself, And the self-organizing part is that when SMEs, folks come into the team, they bring their skills, not their role. Oh, you're a senior DBA. So what? Can you do this? Can you create the stored procedure we need? Yes. Thank you very much. Welcome into the Scrum team. Okay. But they're bringing in skills. Okay. And so the definition around that of what makes up a Scrum team is defined by the accountabilities to each other. Okay. Not just the little title that's on a little, sign outside of their cube wall or on a business card. And so this is how I like to express what the shift into the 2020 Scrum Guide is as a visual perspective, defined by their accountabilities. Okay, does this help anybody connect this picture? Because I appreciate that kind of feedback for students.
I like it.
Awesome. Okay, we're gonna go back to the deck. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Cool.
But I think, you know, my own personal opinion is I think that this is going to be something folks might struggle with.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Because it is, people are very much roles and title. If you're a tester, you test. That's all you do, and be happy that you're doing that. So you know, accountabilities is sometimes maybe an amorphous thing, and hard to define. And what does it mean to be accountable? You know, am I going to get my bonus if I don't do this right? And then, so depending on where am I, you know, if I'm a product owner, Scrum Master, or a developer. So this is this idea, and I like how Marcelo fleshed it out, where Scrum Master is accountable for the use of Scrum by the team. And the product owner is accountable for the work output, what happens to that. So I like where they're going with that. What I worry about with accountabilities, where can accountabilities go bad? Where can this be used poorly?
Blame. I blame you, Leon.
Or if it's just not, if it's not spoken, if assumptions are made.
Yeah, if people don't understand what accountability means, if they really don't understand what accountability means, yes, like, yeah, blame storming. People can use that as a weapon. They can use it as a stick.
Or they can use it to not do something because they, you know.
That's correct. I'm not accountable.
They feel they are not accountable to do it.
Right. It can go both ways.
Correct.
If the Scrum team's not effective, I will demote you now.
So that's using it as a weapon.
Correct.
Yep. Yes.
I love Leon's blame storming though. He and I have survived that together.
Right. But so a lot of people love this because yay, I get to hold people accountable. Right.
Yeah. And so what does that mean? Accountable.
It also opens door for so much micromanaging.
Well, you know what? If you look at the word accountable means to be able to explain what happened, explain what and why. It doesn't mean, let me go take you out in the back and, you know, and you know, do some mean stuff to you or take you out in the park. That's not what that means. It means someone who you can go to and ask, please help me understand. That's what accountability is.
Well, but Marcelo, that's idealistic. If you look at a RACI chart like all management does, that A means something to them.
We can't say anything racy here, Art.
I think it all depends on the company culture as well.
It does come in the company culture because people have to take responsibility if you're going to hold them accountable.
So Terry, you were talking about company culture?
Yeah, I mean, you know, if an organization historically has RACIs and accountability and responsibility defined in their culture, and everybody is used to using it and doing it, that is a very different environment that this would play out in than if it is a company that is not as familiar, or there is a lot more scapegoating that goes on, or, you know, they're kind of coming from a different angle.
Yeah,
that's true.
But then Terry, also somebody can also now use it as a weapon at the end of the day with dates infusing it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not going to say that it's not true because it is.
One point, getting back to what Art started. I have never used a RACI chart within the Scrum team. I've only used it.
Management leadership.
I've only used it for outsiders who are delivering to me. And the only reason why I've never used a RACI chart within the Scrum team, because of the simple answer to what am I accountable for? Every single thing that needs to get done to deliver the sprint goal.
Right. The team is accountable. So everybody is accountable for everything.
For everybody.
Right. So I don't need to delineate what you need to do, you need to make it happen.
Right.
And that means you do it all.
And I've worked in environments where leadership didn't understand Agile so much and they wanted that racy. So to see Scrum team kind of threw them off. Scrum team was responsible, accountable.
Yeah. So I think this is going to be a continuing debate, and you'll hear more about this. But I just want to put in the chat that I want to use accountabilities for good, not ill, and not as a weapon.
Yeah.
And that's just something to think about. Same thing for commitments could be the same thing. If the, organizations I've seen used team commitment in Scrum to be a weapon also. And so we want to make sure things that we're doing at work cannot be used as a weapon. Understanding the culture, Terry, that's a very good point that you were
So I
bringing
got to ask a question based on what you just said. Is that common? Because granted, I was with the same company for a long time and, we went through implementing. I haven't seen a lot of marketplace activity and different companies and how they actually manage it. Is there a lot of weaponization and ill use of accountability and all of that in organizations?
Why don't we have folks type in the chat, or if you want to let us know if you've seen that in your organization or in that organization.
I think accountability makes people more responsible, but not at the same time, it makes them more defensive. And very often they would accept less challenge, or they would take the minimum task, what they need to deliver, or what they know for sure they can deliver it. So accountability can put somebody on the spot.
Other folks want to either type in the chat or offer something up to the group?
Yeah, I've seen it happen, and I'm going to touch on something Marcelo said before. I'm going to try to repeat it exactly, but I'm going to fail. Where he said, "Hey, I'm the X person, so I don't have to do that." I think I've seen it when that situation happens, where you're trying to minimize your responsibility because I'm the architect, so I don't code. I'm the tester. I don't really help the developers understand what it means, what they need to do or how to do something.
Yeah.
When people are trying to exclude themselves or alienate themselves because they want to play a role, that's where I've seen it not work well. I don't like to use the word weaponize.
And normally
it's a noun, and you shouldn't make it a verb.
Rick loves that word.
Yeah, yeah. I've never been a fanatic, even in all my IBM years, taking nouns to make them verbs.
Funny because that's where I learned that word, Ray.
What say again?
I said it's funny because that's where I learned the use of that word was weaponized, was at IBM.
Yes, which drove me crazy because, English is my second language. What the hell are you doing to me?
So yeah, as Leon said, this whole subject of accountability over roles, this is going to go on for a while, folks. So strap yourselves in. But we've got a lot to cover here, so.
All right, I'm moving on.
Let's move on.
Yes, so
to usable.
People were struggling over this potentially releasable, struggling over just saying it and also describing it. So I love where they went with here, because that's the thing about it, right? Is something useful.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be deploying something that's not useful, even potentially.
Yeah.
If it's not useful, don't even think about it. It's not even potentially.
Can I go back to the picture?
I'm sorry, what?
Can I go back
to a picture?
This is my description of picture.
Go ahead.
Between 2017 and 2020, the shifting of the language of potentially releasable or releasable to usable, okay, is to shift the focus on this one word, feedbackable.
That's not a word.
If it's usable, the customer can, or the stakeholder can experience it in some safe way to be able to get feedback and then use that you've learned to make the product better, again, in a safe way. The idea here is to ensure some measure of safety in what the team has produced that doesn't harm the product. Because technically, just because it's feedbackable doesn't mean that you have to release it. You could say, you know what? I'm going to call this whole thing to a halt. I'm not releasing that. I'm not giving you more money for that. Let's do something else. Okay.
I think, yep, that's very well said. All right, so I like this better. Useful is good.
So here's my question. Apply this to a non-IT team.
Sure.
Prototypes, internal prototypes, focus groups. You can get something useful that you can get feedback with, but it doesn't have to actually go out and spend more money to put it out in the public's hands.
So it only works for products?
No, I was going to say it could be a campaign, and it's usable because I have a portion of the total package that I could release if I wanted to, but it is complete and it's usable, and I can get Marcelo to read it and say, yeah, you're right. This is ready for production. We don't need to make any more tweaks. I like it.
And it adds value in any part of it. Like you can have, there can be an increment of it that you can release.
The graphics,
Yep. I'm creating special Christmas cards. And I'm ready to go in February. They're very useful, but I don't want to deploy in February.
Right.
My Christmas cards, I want to wait till December.
So it's product-like based, in other words, as opposed to a team of administrators or a team of managers or executives.
Or service.
Scrum.
Or it could be service-based. I would argue you could do this with admins. You could do this with admins, sure.
And use this language.
Yes. Is what they're doing, so they could create something, or the work that they're doing, is it useful and usable for folks? They could create tools out in the environment. They could do some type of support work. And they're going to get feedback on their work from users, from other people, from consumers of their work.
Right. Like if you come up with an HR process or an accounting process, does it work? Is it usable? You don't want it. It can work for processes too. I'm sorry.
If I can add something, guys. So potentially releasable, it was always about the learnings. So can we say the learnings are usable? Like the learnings provide us with more information that could help us make decisions, that could help us, that could be usable. Can you use that in a sentence? Can you translate it like that?
Okay, the thing is this, that part of the definition of done from the 2017 Scrum Guide defined the rationale for having something as done was so that it was useful and usable. The idea that Ken said potentially releasable or releasable increment was that you did not necessarily have to have the pressure of it actually being released, and you wanted to control the risk of perhaps inadvertently releasing something that, while usable and useful, wasn't complete enough to actually be valuable.
Which could be the difference between deployment and releasing.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And also, I think this speaks to MVP language and how people have been doing MVPs, right? Is that just because it's an MVP or MLP or whatever you want to call it, just because you can deploy it doesn't mean you should deploy it. And it doesn't mean that the people will consume it. They may say, no, not yet. Like, this isn't ready for me yet. I'm not ready to consume or buy this yet.
And we always say, well, the business or the product owner are the ones that tell us when and how much is releasable because the customer is ready to consume it.
That's right.
So here's my challenge. Why can't we use some simple language like useful?
And I actually wrote down useful instead of usable in my notes.
They went for potentially releasable.
But it might not be, it might be useful, but it might not be in a state for feedback. usable implies that it must be able to be experienced.
Yes, but releasable, but releasable is right. Releasable is IT language.
And useful is subjective.
Well, usable, usable is I can do. I can put it to use for its stated purpose, regardless of how that actually takes place. Okay, I can use it for its stated purpose. All right. But the idea there is, again, to give yourself the flexibility to apply that whole empiricism thing. Okay, I gotta love that language too. That they kept that around. All right, to keep yourself from screwing it up and potentially putting something into someone's hands that, while usable,
you said potentially.
Yeah,
exactly. Right, and that's where I'm getting. Instead of potentially usable, why isn't it just useful?
Useful.
That'll be the next 2022 update.
Probably. Well, actually, and this is not to scare everybody, but one of the things that was strongly pitched back to Jeff and Ken is that these changes need to be more incremental and iterative. So don't be surprised if in 2021, don't be surprised.
All
right, let's move on.
Now to the additions. Boom, boom. Leon alluded to this before. Okay, in his Scrum Inc. classes, Jeff, part of the curriculum that we teach is actually referring back to lean thinking. They refer back to this article by Professors Takeuchi and Nonaka, the new product development game, which is still out there for free. I'm blown away that Harvard Business Review charges you a subscription for every other article pretty much out there, but this thing,
that one,
still free,
as in beer.
Yeah, free as in beer. Okay, and the idea here is that whereas in the 2017 Scrum Guide it referred to empirical process control, which, by the way, and this I heard from Ken's mouth, refers to empirical chemical process control.
Yes.
About the way chemicals were empirically produced, okay, to just empiricism, which I tell students, please just take that word out and think science, okay? Science, experiments, and lean thinking. In other words, build just enough to get some learning out of the circumstance, out of what you've built, okay? And so I really love this change because it says, it effectively tells me I don't have to eat the Whopper all the time. I build just enough to have something useful and usable to be able to learn from. Okay. Okay. And show of hands, how many of you guys actually pack your sprint backlog and sprint planning? Oh, I can do 60 points. I have to put 60 points inside of the sprint backlog. Come on. Alfred, raise your hand. I know you do it. Don't say no. Come on, Victoria. I know you do it. Don't say no. We all do it.
I don't do it.
I
don't let them do it.
We've all done it. So
not anymore. I've learned.
That's the key word.
Yeah, thank you.
That's great because it reinforces that you should apply lean thinking even so far as into what should I be planning. Don't eat the Whopper, folks.
It's about a predictable flow, right? It's about a predictable flow.
Right.
Trying to get to that, and not just predictable, but sustainable.
And protected, sustainable. That's the key word.
Correct.
Sustainable.
I use that phrase, every planning session, every refinement, because I have to keep reminding them.
Yep. Is this sustainable? Because one of the things when we get to the sprint planning part, you'll see that conversation about your capacity is actually reinforced now in the Scrum Guide.
Yep.
So lean thinking made more formal. It's always been around there, but made more formal in the 2020 Scrum Guide. And then my least favorite part of it. I'm just going to be quiet because I'm disappointed in this part, to be quite honest with you. You know, I like the concept of commitment. I'm glad that it was brought back in the Scrum values, but I continue to profess that commitments are to people, not to things or metaphors. Okay.
Right. And why is this prescriptive? I thought we were going away from prescriptive language.
Yeah, that was the part that I didn't get.
I didn't like that either when I read it the first time. I was like, wait a minute, you just told us we were going to be a little more fluid, and now you're saying that equals this.
Yeah, although I like the product goal being added to it to kind of showcase what we're doing, but then it's still very, very prescriptive.
But as a commitment, the idea here is, and this is just speaking from what I've seen as a coach, teams still do not focus on not producing, excuse my French, ladies, crap. And so Ken has a strict problem with that. And I suspect that this was Ken's way of saying, guys, we have to get something that's quality. We got to commit to this. Okay. And so he put that language back in strongly. I really hope they back away from this in future revisions of the Scrum Guide. But for better or for worse, I think the language here is trying to reinforce that, hey, we have to do as good as we can. My concern is that management, in quotes, will tend to try to weaponize this and come back to that whole sprint commitment thing that the sprint backlog used to be called. So,
right. So when I explain this to my teams, after my first iteration of reading the Scrum Guide 2020, I left off all the prescriptive stuff and just said, your commitment for the sprint is what?
I won't tell on you, Victoria.
Okay.
I won't tell.
I just didn't like it.
I won't tell on you. The one thing that I will say that was there in the 2017 Scrum Guide, although it wasn't as explicit as it is in the 2020, teams always committed to a goal for the sprint, always committed to a goal for the sprint, yet the sprint backlog, in other words, the body of work, always remained malleable. It could change. You could add, remove, rewrite,
as it should,
whatever you felt you needed to. Okay.
Which is why you don't commit to 80 points.
Yeah. So that in of itself has been around. It's just been made more prescriptive. So I agree with you guys. Thank you. Appreciate the backup there that was probably not the best of choice of words for them. So let's keep moving so we can talk about the stuff that was nice that was added there, the product goal. All right. With that product goal, which is kind of funny because people ask, is it the product vision or what is it? No, it's certain objectives that align to a product vision, but the product vision is much more strategic. Product goals are a lot more tactical, okay? They're, as it says, it's a future state. In other words, so it's actually something more concrete than a product vision, okay? And since they're supposed to be a target, technically speaking, it's something that the team should be able to figure out, is this achievable? Okay. And if so, if this is achievable, okay, what is it that we have to include into the product backlog or change about the product backlog so that this product goal becomes achievable? Okay. So in that sense, I actually like this, to be quite honest with you.
Yep.
I actually like this. This is a good thing for me. I'm not shook up about it.
Okay? I interpret this in my head as our commitments have to meet that goal. Every sprint, what we commit to builds on meeting that goal. Is that the right interpretation?
The idea is the goal is the commitment. In other words, this is the objective we're trying to reach. The things that feed into that objective can go change all over the place. Okay?
But to me, I see this as aligned to the product backlog, not necessarily in a sense. So when I think about the product goal, I think about the product backlog. Well, in the product backlog, if you look at Scrum Guide 2017, how many times do you see work in there? It's work.
Items of work. Yeah.
Nothing about the product. Nothing about why are we working? To what end are we working? Here, what I'm seeing is this is really, to me, the product goal is aligned with the product backlog. So the things in the product backlog ought to achieve some type of product goal. And if it's not in the product backlog, we got a problem. So we need to be thinking about our product backlog and the goals that will emanate, and you can start with the goals and then your product backlog is how we get there.
Well, so.
Right. I like you said in the chat, a commitment to a thing, to an item.
Right.
I like to have the commitment to the goal, to the theory, to not a list of items.
So many times when we build product backlogs, whether you want to call them initiatives or projects, whatever we call them, the work that we're working towards, we do some goals and objectives that we translate into KPIs.
Sure.
Right.
And so maybe it's referring to some of that, and it's very tangible, and it's something that we can measure up against. And the work in the product backlog is going to help us meet certain measurable, smart metrics, right?
Yep.
Maybe it refers to that, and we do that. When we're launching teams, when we're coaching Scrum teams, they have goals and objectives. They're smart, they're measurable, and when we want to go back and do some value realization against that,
maybe, okay. And so how I'm showing it here is how I'm interpreting and describing this, is that it becomes an objective that the team then negotiates. By the way, this is a way, not the way. I want to be very clear about that. This is a way to interpret this, okay? That the team then negotiates to be what the sprint goal ought to be, and then the items that come out of that product backlog in sprint planning are in support of that goal. That becomes your initial forecast. And then during the sprint, other items can emerge and grow out into that product backlog as necessary.
And
achieve that
feedback. And as you get feedback.
Correctly. Yes, that's correct. Absolutely. Okay. So this is how I like to think of it, that it lives in the product backlog. Okay. More than likely, perhaps being aligned with certain things. You never know. Okay. I mean, some people might say, okay, I might like to use this phrase. I'm not a fan of it, but it is what it is.
It is millstone? Like you are a millstone?
Milestone. Okay. What? So milestone.
Oh, okay.
Even a release. A product goal could be a release. In other words, you are free to interpret what that means to you as a Scrum team. You are free to interpret that. So that actually, because it's actually not as prescriptive. So going back to the deck, because another commitment is that sprint goal, which, as you saw, emerges from the conversation. Okay. The thing is, it is a single objective for the sprint. Okay. Maybe that thing could be actually get this ready for release for that other product goal that we had a few sprints back. Who knows? Okay.
So Marcelo, I have a question.
Yeah.
So what happens if in a team you're not doing, you do not have any production-based work, you're just doing documentations and all that? How does the product goal now come into play? I'm watching that because I have so much developmental works that are not going to production. They're more like documentations and all that.
Is make it auditable. You're producing documentation. Is it auditable? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that sprint goal is make the documentation we've built auditable. Who knows?
Cool.
That's just one response. You were going to say something, Alfred?
Yeah. Why are you I've done projects like that. So why are you doing the documentation? In our case, it was because of audited or because the regulations changed.
Yeah, regulation changes. Yeah, OCC mandates and all that.
Right. So I mean, you're bringing your level of compliance up. So I mean, and so the level of risk at which the current state is to the next state. I mean, that could be the goal, right? To get it to that level.
Let me ask you a question. You're working in a regulated environment, and you find out that your regulatory body is going to come do an audit. Is it okay to have a sprint goal that says prepare for when the auditors are going to show up?
Yeah.
That's
as long as it's lined up with the product
well, so then there's a question, Victoria. Does making our documentation body more auditable provide extra value to the product?
the product.
Usually does.
More valuable?
If that's what's needed, yes. It could.
Ah, there you go.
It
There
could. It could. Okay.
There
Ray
you go.
had a good question in the chat.
Okay, and okay, who is?
You see it? Ray asked it. Ray?
MVP, many goals, but less than a product goal. The answer is it depends.
I like
It
that.
depends. Really depends. We need
I
know
like that though. I think that's a great way to explain that to your teams.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I'll tell you this much, okay? And this will probably rock your head. If the team decides to improve something about its process this particular sprint and takes that as a sprint goal, is that okay?
Sure.
There you go.
I don't see why not.
There you go. So there you go. If you commit to doing that, sprint goal.
Especially if it's focused on a better
Development.
output down the road, involving the product.
Better for you to deliver your
Your
future
product.
increments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then there you go. Then that adds value. So, in other words, think beyond. Think beyond.
Negotiation.
So let's go to the next commitment, which I personally happen to love. I'm not glad that you're applying for a commitment to it.
Can we go back for a second?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Hold on. I wanted to go back to, let's see if I can do
Which
this.
one? Product goal?
Yeah.
Okay. Whoops. There you go.
So, Victoria, you brought up something that I wanted to talk about. So this is how I think about, or where I think is a good visual of how this all sort of fits into some of this. Where you're thinking about that a company vision, you know, informs a product vision, informs a, I'll call it solution, we'll call it solution or value discovery. But having this sort of, you know, kind of product onion or planning onion, right? For what we're doing with the product goal, I think is really important. And to me, the product goal goes under the product vision, product strategy. It's kind of in that section, in that area. So I think what I'd like to see is a good visual around how a product goal and their updated definition of done and sprinkle fits into all this.
I'd like that too. That would probably really help explain this when you guys are talking about it.
Okay.
Keep on going, Marcelo.
Take that feedback. I appreciate that.
We know you can do it, Marcelo.
So I'm gonna jump ahead to definition of done, just a little something I know a little bit about. And the idea there is that the definition is done has been around with us for a very long time. But again, like I said, Ken has a really strong penchant towards not doing crappy work. And so I suspect that he turned this into a commitment because he wants to ensure that teams have a strong understanding of what quality means. And notice it's there in the statement, equality measures, meets the quality measures required for the product. It means don't just do the least you can do. Actually try to do as good as you can, okay? And if you go back into the 2017 Scrum Guide, he implied that by saying that over time, the definition of done should get stricter and more refined as time went by, okay? That was actually in the guide. He even went so far as to say that if you had multiple teams working together, they should have a joint definition of done as a baseline. You can go higher, but nobody shall pass below this bar of definition of done. Why? Again, back to that quality business. Okay, back to that quality business. And
I know I'm talking a lot, but when we were first spinning up a Scrum team going from waterfall to Agile, we created a definition of done for the product backlog items, for what qualified done for a sprint, what qualified done for a release, and then, you know, everything. So that way we knew when we hit that mark, then it was time to release. Like testing had been completed, regression was done, documentation was uploaded if necessary, all of that, training, all of that.
Right.
So that I already kind of see as happening in some teams.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because one of the things that Ken wanted to promote, that teams can't just do or build whatever they want. There are constraints to any kind of work, any kind of context. What does delivering quality product mean in your context? Define what that deliver quality product, and don't just say what the quality product delivered looks like. Also define how you're going to ensure that that quality is there. In other words, I'm talking about a thing called a standard of care. Okay. In other words, do you like when you go to a dentist, let's say that the room is actually cleaned, especially now during COVID, but the chair is clean, you got a new piece of paper there, the sink that you gotta, you know, whatever, it's all clean. Well, how did it get that way after that last patient that left that looked kind of grungy? The tech applied a standard of care to the definition of done, and that done means the patient is done, okay? The patient is done so that the next patient can come in. So they applied a standard of care before you come in as the next patient, okay? And so that's all stuff that is baked in there into the definition of done. And it takes a bit of thinking. It takes a bit of thinking. You know what? Maybe that might be a topic for us to do one night, Leon. Maybe that might be something for us to do for 2021 is talk about what the heck is this definition of done. So the last thing I'm going to say, though, is that Ken wanted a delineation mark that when you've met this standard of done, okay, that's an increment, okay? And I confess to you that this really blew some trainers' minds, which surprised me. I'm like, what do you mean there's multiple? Of course there are multiple increments. There are multiple things that can get done in a sprint. So of course there's multiple increments, but apparently this caused a little bit of grief for trainers. That's a little sad truth.
All right, let's move on.
Let's move on. Okay. So the third point, it's now not just what and how, but why. From my perspective, this was kind of already there. Ken and Jeff just wanted to reinforce it to you that we need to know why the sprint is valuable. That's embodied in the sprint goal. Okay. We got it from the product goal, hopefully. Okay. And so to understand what's valuable gives the team focus. Okay. Gives the team a sense of purpose. Okay. Any questions about this? Because actually I found that this was probably the thing that was least changed in my mind and my understanding, but apparently was this big uproar for people. So
unless we're here for me, let's move on.
So let's move on. Now let's talk about what's removed. Okay.
You have to say it that way.
There's an infernal 3 questions. They're gone. Good riddance. Yes, I hear people, I hear Scrum Masters, I hear coaches. Well, they need something to start. Yeah, but if you've been running your Scrum team for 5 years and you're still answering what I did yesterday, what I'm gonna do today, and is there something in my way, I'm gonna blow up your Kanban board. Seriously, folks. Okay, we need to go beyond that. The answer is if you understand what your team was working with, and you should be collaborating with your team, there's only one question that you have to answer. Gee, brain, what are we going to do today? Same thing we do every day, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
Right.
That's the daily Scrum. What is our plan to take over the world today? How do we get closer to the goal? So one question. That's it. Okay. So for me,
I got a question real quick.
Yeah.
All right. So does that mean that they're not meeting daily?
No, absolutely not. They are absolutely meeting daily. It means that those 3 questions do not have to encompass the be-all, end-all of that meeting.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Okay.
Gotcha.
In other words, it is less prescriptive in that you guys need to figure out how to assess your progress toward the goal and what the new plan for getting towards that goal should look like.
Because things change every day.
Yeah, because people were using those 3 questions as crutches.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just putting it out there, folks. They were using
rolling their eyes.
Yeah. So let's move on. Okay. Now sprint review. Notice there's 3 different things removed. Is before we used to see what was done and has not been done. Now it's just what was done. That's it. We review just what was done. It is assumed that what was not done, well, it goes somewhere. It doesn't go into the next sprint. Watch my fingers. It goes somewhere. That somewhere might be the product backlog, but it certainly doesn't go to the next sprint, right?
Right.
Notice that they say also that we used to discuss what went well, what didn't go well. So it's kind of like you're retrospecting. Now, there's none of that. None of that.
Marcelo, I remember when you were discussing what was going to get done, you mentioned this was going to get done, but we didn't talk about it. Did it get done? No, it didn't get done.
No, because we only talk about what actually got done. It is assumed that you, if you're in the team, are in the know. It is assumed that if you're the product owner and you're collaborating with the stakeholders, if something's not going to get done, at some point you should be having that conversation with your stakeholders.
Yep. Okay. And that happens in the Scrum meeting as well. What's not trending to be finished,
or at some other time is yet to be determined. Okay?
Yeah, and why is this still there?
Yeah, and then lastly, it turned into the old definition of the sprint review turned it like into a progress review for the whole product. Now it's like, hey guys, let's just say what's different in the environment. Okay, is there anything that might change the direction of this product right now? If so, what? And let's do something about it. But you don't have to go into this.
To me, to me, this was a power dynamic where in 2017 it was you need to do these things to justify stuff. Here, this seems to me more collaborative. You're collaborating with your customer and your stakeholders on this. So you're just a collaborator. And so there's no there shouldn't be a pressure per se. It's, hey, we just want to get you in here and let's collaborate on where we are now and where we're going to go.
Correct.
So it's just a point in time, not a, oh my thing, let's escalate.
Oh crap, exactly. Okay. And then last but not least of the ones that we could share with you today is the restrictiveness about product backlog refinement. It used to define that you'd say should take less than 10% of the capacity of the team. If I had $1 for how many Scrum Masters would say, oh, we got to allocate 10% of the capacity of the team to product backlog refinement, I was like, are you kidding me? Come on. So now there's no mention of how much capacity. Why? Because it's said that it should be some sort of ongoing activity for your own benefit. You guys need to figure out when it makes sense for you.
But that happens naturally.
It should.
I'm glad it's in writing.
Okay.
Because we all ignored this anyway.
Yeah. Well, no, wait a minute. Except if your Scrum Master was ex-PMO. Just saying.
Okay.
Just saying.
Marcelo.
Yeah. That's
Marcelo.
I'm just saying. Okay. So to kind of recap it, we're back to this wonderful picture that kind of summarized all this stuff for us. So take us home, Leon.
Less prescriptive. One team, one product goal. And I really think this whole idea of simplification, lean thinking, and removing waste, self-management. Overall good.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All good.
All good.
All good stuff.
All good.
All good stuff. So, and for when this gets posted, there's some links in here that you'll be able to follow along with that.
When can I get the slides, Marcelo?
Yeah, we'll probably continue this conversation at other times because other stuff will continue to be a point of contention. But hey, on behalf of Chips and myself, I want to say thank you for being such good sports and hanging in there with us.
What happened to the question on page 5?
How many more slides are left?
That's it. That's all she wrote.
The question on page 5.
Yeah, how much is this slide deck going to cost us?
That's it.
How much?
It's
Go back to slide 23. Can you keep
free?
No, Regina, I didn't say slide 3. I said page 5.
Yeah. So before everybody jumps into celebration mode, I want to ask one question of one of our new attendees. Ming, you came from Nepal. Was it worth staying up till 2 in the morning for this? I got to know. I'm going to go crazy if I don't know. Was this worth staying up till 2 in the morning for this?
That's not Ming, somebody else.
Yeah, that was.
Was it Ming? I'm sorry.
I think they fell asleep.
He dropped off. Oh man. Oh man,
I was too shocked.
He emailed me though and said on his behalf that it was awesome, Marcelo, and great job. This was a great meetup. It couldn't have been any better.
Couldn't have been better than this.
Now he's stroking my ego.
A major applause.
But all seriously, it was a good session. It was a great session.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. I can say that as a new member because I honestly hadn't had a chance to look at the new Scrum Guide, so I'm glad that we kind of went line by line on all the important stuff. So thanks for that.
Love it, love it. So again, excellent job. You know, a big round of applause. Great coaching. All right,
I'm right on LinkedIn, ready to be the first one to like, but I know I can't. So I won't.
Yes, you can go to the link I just shared in the chat.
A challenge here.
Nelu, I see some gang up going on, Nelu.
Now watch that Omar gets it first.
I don't know how he gets it here.
Yeah.
Oh my God, who got it? Who got it?
Who got it?
I don't know.
Who got it, people?
I'm about to know.
I see two. I see Terry and Godwin.
Okay, now I can go
Terry and Destiny.
There we go.
Destiny.
Destiny was first, I believe.
Destiny, way to go.
Yeah.
Way to go, Destiny. All right, so again, a great opportunity. Let me share with you a quick story. Marcelo and I was getting trained a long time ago on Scrum. We had Ken in the room.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he mentioned was really kind of shocking for me. He kept using the word Scrum butt.
Yep.
Scrum butt.
I've heard that before.
This whole idea that if you're not doing Scrum the way we prescribe to you, then you're doing something else. Right. But as you noticed, Scrum is evolving. There are changes. There are adjustments. So you might have been doing the right thing and they called it Scrum butt. So please make sure you get your own learnings. Make sure you understand the whys. Some of these things that they took off, maybe you value today. So keep that in mind as you work through your journey. These are great conversations to have and great experimenting. I mean, I got to make sure that everyone, no matter what whether you're a Scrum Master, that you're also taking the opportunity to try new things. You know, every sprint should be an opportunity for you to learn, not just developing the product, but also experimenting with, you know, maybe new ideas, new concepts. Okay. So I love the community. This is a very, very tight community and you guys have done an amazing job. We're here Saturday. So join us on Saturday. Like Marcelo mentioned earlier, if you're looking for any training, any certification, we have it here for you. So please make sure you join us if you're interested in that. I've heard there's